Welcome to the Art Colony, a podcast about art and art history in Provincetown. My name is Gaston Lacombe. At the moment of recording this, spring has definitely sprung in Provincetown. It's actually very hot today. And I'm not just saying this because temperatures are slightly warmer and daffodils are in flower. I'm also saying this because a lot of people are returning to town and businesses are reopening. Just last weekend, a good dozen restaurants reopened for the season, and a good number of stores dusted off their welcome mats too. But one of the surest signs that summer's coming soon in Provincetown is that the 20 Summers program is ready for this year. And it's about to start. And what is 20 Summers, you ask? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's welcome to the Art Colony podcast 20 Summers program director, Alice Gong. Hi, Alice.
Hi.
I'm so happy you're here.
Me too. This is very exciting.
I contacted you last year when we started the podcast, but it was right in the center of your programming season and it didn't happen. So we have you this year. I'm very happy about that. So tell us, who is Alice Gong?
Hi. I am Alice Gong. I have been an Outer Cape more or less resident for over 15 years now. Or we can say seasons, as many folks who are dedicated here live here, but do travel in the off season. I started coming here just for summers. In a past life, I was a nomadic snowboarder and a sushi chef, and that's what first drew me to the Outer Cape. And then as I, was looking for a new chapter in my life, I slowly discovered all of the art that is the Outer Cape, that is our identity. Beyond the hustle and bustle of Commercial Street, Provincetown really is so fortunate to have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to arts organizations and community organizations. So I'm very proud and happy to be a part of that in helping curate and run 20 Summers.
So you said you first came here as a sushi chef?
That is correct.
Well, that's a very unusual trajectory to get. And how did you get involved with 20 Summers?
My first season at 20 Summers was the spring of 2019. I was hired as the first festival coordinator. 20 Summers was started about 15 years ago by a small group of dedicated dreamers who wanted to bring the Hawthorne Barn back to the public sphere so that the community can use it to enjoy art. And it started out as a passion project, and it was very small. It was founder board led, and they had some people helping here and there. Events were mostly run by volunteers. And the year that I joined, then executive director Camille was like, "We're finally growing enough that we can hire someone to help us for the organization." So I was that person.
So I'm sure a lot of people right now are thinking, what is 20 Summers? Where does this come from? So can you tell us a bit, a history of the organization?
I think what we're most known for is the iconic venue that we get to host our May, June Arts and Culture Festival in. The Hawthorne Barn sits at the end of Miller Hill Road. Miller Hill is, when you're going up Bradford, if you take a left off Conwell and you're going towards the east end on Bradford, you crest this hill. And at the top of that hill, if you take a left, that's Miller Hill Road. And at the very end of that road, up a little wooded path, at the very top of that hill sits the Hawthorne Barn. It was built by Charles Hawthorne in 1906. Charles Hawthorne was an artist, and he had built the barn as an art school. That's something that we often ask, like, was this actually a barn? No, it was always built from the beginning as an art school, which is why it has the tremendous light that it does. The barn is known for a huge north window, and there's windows on all sides. And what Hawthorne taught in that space was painting. And with a north window, you get the most consistent amount of light throughout the day. And, in the analog world of art, over 100 years ago, painting takes time, and as the light shifts, the paintings will shift. And this barn is very special. I call it the Barn, the Studio of Provincetown. After Charles Hans Hoffman also taught in that space before he built his studio in the West End. And he actually modeled his studio after the Hawthorne Barn, also with a large north facing window. And many other studios have done the same. I know that Sal Daldeo's studio barn, again, has that same large north window as a consistent source of light for these folks' painting practices.
And my house has that too.
Because your house is
Used to be an
also an
art
art
school.
school.
Yeah, because you've been to my house,
I
right?
have.
Yeah, that was many years ago.
I met your house before I met you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, my house has that too, a whole wall of windows on the
Mhm.
northern side.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, the Outer Cape known for its special light and that hard to describe quality when you're surrounded by water. It's the barn really encapsulates that.
And what happened after Hoffman?
After Hoffman, I am not super clear on the history, but I know that there have been, everyone who is anyone and many luminaries have spent time in the barn. Jackson Pollock, Henry Henchy. Henry Henchy's handprints actually still up in the loft. Tennessee Williams. We don't know if these folks necessarily made art in the barn, but we're pretty sure they partied there.
Yeah, that definitely would be a good party space.
Yeah. All the bohemians and the avant-garde artists, and really just since Hawthorne, that space has been in use by artists and creatives. About 15 years ago, three friends, Joshua Prager, who is a writer, Julie Glass, who is a writer, and their friend, Ricky O'Patterney, came together to purchase the barn, and with the idea of forming a nonprofit around it. Today, the barn is privately owned, and the organization is very, very fortunate to have the space for 5 weeks a year, during which we program conversations, have an artist residency, have concerts, have installations, and workshops, and most of which all are free or for suggested donation, so that we can open up the space to share with the community.
And it's in private hands now. So um, what happens to the barn when you're not activating it as 20 Summers?
We respect the privacy of the owners, and it is their space.
It's their space.
Absolutely. Yep.
So we have to get invited if you want to have a party there.
Yeah, we really respect the privacy of the owners, and make sure that we are good stewards of the space. And again, it's wonderful that we get the time that we do in there.
So tell us, what's the mission of 20 Summers as an organization?
20 Summers was founded to honor the legacy of the space itself, the Hawthorne Barn, and to be a resource to artists, as well as to Provincetown community and beyond. We've been very fortunate to extend our mission beyond the Hawthorne Barn. 2 seasons ago, we started using the space at the back half of the lower floor of the schoolhouse building, that we have now dubbed Stanley, after Stanley Kunitz, who wrote the poem Route 6, which the closing line of is the namesake for 20 Summers. That's another frequently asked question that I'm not going to recite the poem to you, but because I don't remember it. But the closing line, the story is about a hot summer day, and it leads to a road trip out to Provincetown, and through the poem you just feel this release and this sense of freedom as you smell the salt air. And I think many folks resonate with, like, the sigh and the letting go as they get closer to Provincetown. The closing line of Route 6 by Stanley Kunitz, the namesake of 20 Summers, is the last stretch toward home, 20 summers rolls by. And some people have asked, is it called 20 summers because you only exist for 20 summers, which is an understandable interpretation. I say no, it's this poem, and as we were founded by writers, we have a artistic origin of the name.
Because that's what I had been told. I had been told that when I discovered 20 Summers that, oh yeah, they're only doing this for 20 Summers and then it's going to be done. I was thinking, well, that's a stupid idea. Well, good. I'm glad to hear you're not going to be there just for 20 Summers. And tell us a bit about what kind of programming you do then during the festival.
Our program right now is all posted at 20summers.org, and I invite everybody to explore the programming themselves. This year, we are very excited to continue a series that we have done with Mark Adams and in partnership with the Center for Coastal Studies for several years called Ecosystems and Imagination. For the past couple of seasons, we've been kicking off our programming with this series with a panel. And there's always a field trip to the harbor, which is very fun. Mark Adams will lead a walk during low tide to really experience this huge change that happens daily that we all just take for granted, and pointing out the differences in the ecosystem at low tide, and then talking about and inviting participants to think about how the town can come together to think about creative solutions to our seaside community in the face of climate change and rising sea levels. And this year, the third piece of this series will be an event called Future Ocean Bohemians that Mark Adams has curated that will involve scientific and artistic readings and performances. A much loved part of our programming are the concerts at the barn. The barn itself is a large wooden box, essentially, and it is an absolutely unique venue to hear music. It is so intimate, and it really reverberates. So that's always a big hit. We also have our signature residency program. We invite 4 residents to Provincetown for a week where they will stay at the Cape Codder and use the barn and our Stanley space as their workspaces. This year, there will be 2 fabric based installation artists. Both will have some time to install in the barn, which will be great because those open studio times are, we welcome folks to come and experience the barn transformed, as well as a installation at Ballston Beach that we invite folks to participate in. This year, again, we will be doing a partnership with PAM, where Provincetown's very own John Clayton leads a painting class in the barn to harken back to its original purpose. This year is a little different. We're offering a 1-day class for folks who don't have enough time. But for returning folks, we also have the option of a 3-day boot camp to really dive into the work. The painting class involves painting from still life as well as model. And John teaches in the technique that Hawthorne taught in.
So it's following the tradition that the barn was built for.
Absolutely. And it's great because you really learn a lot of history about that time in Provincetown and what it was like to live and paint and to be in Provincetown when the barn was built in the time of Hawthorne.
Welcome back. Just a reminder to follow us on Instagram at The Art Colony Podcast. And also, if you want to help us and support the podcast, you can do so by going to buymeacoffee.com. Do a search for The Art Colony Podcast, and you can leave us a tip. And I would like to thank today Eric, Rob, Tim, and Michael, and Scott as well for supporting the podcast. Thank you very much. Alice, you mentioned residence at 20 Summers. So, how does that work? Is there an application? Is there a way to get involved, or do people have to wait to be invited?
We get this question a lot. Because we're such a small organization, we don't have an open call because just with the limited staff, as in 20 Summers is me and one other full time employee. And our residents come about from nominations from our community, our board, past artists who've been involved. But that said, we're also always happy to hear from artists whenever we get emails, whenever we get inquiries. I welcome everybody to email info@20summers.org with their resume and why they would be interested in being a resident.
One of your residents from last year, I think, Sean Robertson, has been on the podcast. And in her episode, we talked a lot about her installation at 20 Summers. So that's somebody who was really affected by your programs. And I also remember last year, one of my very close friends, Mike Sullivan, had a residency at the barn, and he was extremely excited. And his was um, but he does masks and he also does music. So it was a combination of a whole bunch of stuff. And it was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm very interested in giving people the opportunity to be at the barn, partially to just soak up the history of it and to be in that unique space. But the barn itself also offers kind of a, there's a saying that you can create the more restraints, the better the art. The barn has many restraints. We it is a very ancient building, and for Sean and for Mike, they had all these. They wanted to suspend things and hang things, but we can't alter the building structurally, and what we can hang is very limited. And when I invite people to the space, it's always like, how can we really utilize what is special about the space? And that is the light. That is the light that suffuses through it. And it is definitely, it's not a tabula rasa. It is a specific aesthetic of the worn wood and the nails coming through the roof and the metal um, the metal cross beams that are actually preventing the barn from collapsing outwards. These structural elements that are very much a part of the space, and then to take their art and to present it in a new way, given the space. So for Sean, specifically, I'd been aware of their work and loved it, and really wanted to see a unique installation and a new manifestation of their work that isn't so confined to the boxes. And same with Mike, to be able to present his work along with music and fashion and all of these other pieces, so that it's a multi-sensory experience. That's really what I really wanna see more of is, installation spaces and different ways to experience art, beyond the more traditional solid forms or 2D and 3D forms.
Mike Sullivan's show last year, it was really interesting that he had also brought so many guest musicians and guest singers and all these people. Is this something that 20 Summers was coordinating for him, or was that all of his initiative and you just helped make it happen?
Whenever I, start working with an artist, we like to really, be a resource and be a platform and, can't put nails in the walls of the barn and you can't hang too many heavy things, but what would you like to do? Like in a world where you could do anything, what's something that would really excite you that you haven't had the opportunity to experiment with? And then we work with them to see logistically, budget-wise, also, we only have an hour and a half to present to folks. We can't actually fit, more than 6 max performers on stage at a time, or what is your stage? And it's really exciting to help artists make their visions come true.
And Shad, I think it's on the podcast, or maybe it's a conversation we had outside the podcast, but I'm pretty sure it's on the podcast. Sean Robertson had said that staying in the barn, overnighting in the barn, for her had been one of the highlights of the program. So residents get to stay there overnight also.
There's different definitions of residents. I mean, we have so many forms of people, artists who are working with us through the season. There are the residents that we invite who stay at the Cape Codder, but very specifically for the installation artists, it just makes sense for them to stay there so they can maximize their install time and to make those adjustments as needed. When the artist residency program was first conceived, artists stayed in the barn. But what I found, so that, when I first came in 2019, I think during the 5 weeks, each week we had a resident. So I think we had 4 residents, and each resident got to stay at the barn from like Sunday to Thursday, knowing that Thursday through Sunday we had all the other public facing events. But really, like, that is a very brief amount of time to be in the space. By the time you're situated, you gotta move out. And, there's always an adjustment period before you can produce or not produce. And we don't ask for deliverables from our artists, unless we're talking about a specific installation that has been well planned in advance. But so the residents that I spoke of who, will now be staying at the Cape Codder, we came up with this different idea. We're like, when asking for feedback from our residents, one resident one year said, "This isn't a residency; it's more like a little long weekend." We're like, "Great, we really appreciate that feedback." So the first thing we did was think about how we can increase their stay. So from 4 days now, residents get um, 7 days. So 8 days if you count the travel days, but that way at least they get a longer stretch of time in Provincetown. We also, we found some lodging partners, and we found that if we're able to house them off site from the barn, then we can have more residents come, stay for longer. And yes, the barn is their workspace when we are not holding public facing events, but it just provides a better experience for the artists. And we also, do provide an honoraria to them for their time here. As we've heard from folks, like, this, it's not enough just to offer artists space. Like, they're working.
Yeah, artists, we need money too.
Yeah, no, they need we artists
Yeah.
need to be compensated. And so the way that we think about inviting artists now, really, it's they get time to be in the space, to be at the barn now as well. In Stanley, like, one year we had a dance group as a residency, and they got to practice dance at Stanley. They got to practice dance at the beach. They got to just be in all of the different spaces that Provincetown provides. And the only thing that we ask of artists, visiting artists, is one public facing event so that they can interact with our community. And, that doesn't have to be a presentation per se. It could be a workshop. And it's been many forms with the various people we've invited.
Can you tell us what we can look forward to this May and June 2026? In case you're listening in 2029 or something, we're talking about 2026 right now. So what could we look forward to in May and June this year?
In terms of the residents, since we've just been speaking about that, Thomas Jackson is one of our residents this year, and he will have a installation in the barn as well as a installation at Ballston Beach. Part of his work, aside from the installation itself, is the process of photographing it. So that's what the Balsam Beach piece will be. Another one of our residents is Kathy Ryan, who will, for her public facing event, will be in conversation with Adam Moss about what makes a good photograph. Um, Damien Horde de Galvin is hosting a free sculpture workshop, which would be very fun to explore his process. And Najee Brown will be hosting a workshop exploring what breaks your heart and what brings you joy, which should be very fun. Um, Liz Collins will have an installation in the barn as well, which will be immersive and very physically in motion, is what I envision it to be. This year, for the first time, we're partnering with the Provincetown Monument, the Pilgrim Monument and Provincetown Museum, to have a concert in their gallery. We're excited to host a book talk in celebration of Stephen Orr's new book, The Gardener's Mindset. You might have read some of his pieces in The Independent.
Yeah, and he's been recommended to come on the podcast. So Stephen Orr, if you're listening, get in touch because people have said you should be on my podcast.
Oh yeah. The book is I've been fortunate to start reading it a bit, and I am not a gardener. I am always happy to experience new things, and in such good hands being led by Stephen Orr into that beautiful world.
So all this information is at 20summers.org, right?
Yep.
20summers.org.
Absolutely. RSVPs are all open. So 20summers.org and sign up for events.
One thing that was really fun with 20 Summers last year in the summer, well, in the spring, because it's always in the spring, one of my good friends, Michael Joseph, had a huge outdoor installation in that alley downtown that's next to Marine Specialties. Does that alley have a name? It's the alley next to Marine Specialties.
Yeah, the old reliable alley.
I guess that's what it is. But he had this fantastic installation there that 20 Summers helped facilitate, where all of his photos were printed and then pasted to the walls, because he's done these wonderful photos of sort of the nightlife creatures of Provincetown. Can you tell more about, the activities that happen outside of the barn?
Yeah, that was a great project. We were excited to have Michael Joseph as a resident. And again, in speaking with him about what are your dreams that you would like to, make happen, we talked about that installation. And that was a fun puzzle to solve, starting from getting permission from that particular location. And he had chosen that location because much of his photography was taken there. So he wanted to showcase it there. And a large body of his work are travelers. And he had published a book around his photography with those folks. And again, like that particular location is where some of the buskers and the musicians
hang out.
Yeah, it's where they are, where you can
Yeah.
find them making music. It was really exciting working with him to make that dream come true. Like everything from testing out the wheat paste and to see how long it would last, and installing it, helping him get all the ladders. I mean, it's really fun to help.
And it was
Bring it to
interesting
fruition.
because it was an installation that was meant to degrade with time. It was meant to fade as the summer passes. And you could also see somehow how people were interacting with it. Some people were defacing it. Some people were helping it out. But it was a very interesting sort of snapshot, if you want, as a photographer, of the faces of Provincetown and how the summer modifies them as it keeps on going.
Provincetown and art, it's a living space. It's
Yeah.
not monumental. It is all art and process, art and experience. And as we all know, the only thing constant is change.
Yeah. Yeah. And people always complain, "Oh, the art colony is over. Everything has changed." Like, well, yeah, everything changes all the time. And yeah, and that's one of the reasons I started the podcast because I wanted to really emphasize the fact that this is a living, thriving art community, not something that only happened in the past, but it's happening now. You just have to open your eyes and pay attention. Now, you mentioned briefly Stanley. So you now have a year-round location where you can have activities. Can you tell us more about the space and what happens there?
Absolutely. What I've always found to be the most exciting part about 20 Summers, even before we got Stanley, was that we were a festival. And within this festival, we were able to really have the flexibility to bring in different disciplines to constantly be modifying, growing, shifting our focus, depending on feedback and what's exciting and what are new ways to engage with our community. And with Stanley, we're really able to expand that. And the way I kind of think about it is, firmly rooted in the history and the legacy of the Hawthorne Barn and Provincetown as the longest continuous artist colony in America. Um, 20 Summers is connecting with the past and with our new Stanley space, which is a more traditional gallery space with white walls. We're really able to kind of explore the future of art and the future of how 20 Summers and Provincetown can engage with a larger dialogue and the definitions and the community and exploring what the future of that could mean in terms of art and technology, art and social justice, um, art as a means of community connection and change. Right now at Stanley, we have a really fascinating project called Media Diet that was brought to us by Amar Bakshi. When we first met him, he had told us about a project he had created called Portals, which um, what we love about his ideas, it's all about how to use technology to better facilitate dialogue and to bring people together. As we see, there's certainly much evidence of technology as being divisive and inciting, fear of the unknown and the loss of control and maybe the loss of our humanity. But, as all things, as a double edged sword, technology can be harnessed and focused to make art and to bring people together and to facilitate dialogue. So, back to Amar's Portals project, he had created these containers where on a large screen you could intimately connect with a person, a face on the other side of the world to just have a chat. And he had created this in a way that was replicable and accessible to a large audience, beyond just a brick and mortar large institution of a traditional, museum or some setting like that. The idea behind Media Diet is to create a visceral experience through which you can see somebody else's how somebody else experiences the news. The Media Diet team found three volunteers who self-identified as left, central, and right, and forensically recreated their room in which they experience media. So when you go into Stanley, which I invite you all to do, there's three rooms complete with the same art on their walls, their same golf trophy and dog crates, furniture. And I think the part that really brings it together for me is um, window boxes that show the view out of their window. And you're invited to sit on their couch and watch and listen to their TV, scroll news articles on their computer, and explore social media on their phones. And there's a cool technology piece behind this, which is this is all connected to a server that actually updates with the current news for each of these folks.
That sounds like a lot of work, but it's super interesting. It's a very unique and interesting concept. And that is on right now,
That is on right now through Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. And Stanley is located behind the Schoolhouse Gallery, which is at the corner of Commercial and Howland Street in
Correct.
Provincetown. So if people want to learn more about that exhibit or other Stanley programming, that's at the same website, 20summers.org?
Yep, 20summers.org has all the information, has updated Stanley hours. Our hours will be increasing as town opens up a bit more.
And do you have programming also all through the fall and winter?
We do. By mid-May, we will have an announcement that has all of the shows and experiences at Stanley for 2026. The best way to stay in touch with us is to sign up for our newsletter and to follow us on social media, as those will be the most updated announcements.
Well, Alice, we have now reached the end of the interview. So our listeners know that this means the time for the speed round. And are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, first question in the speed round. If you had to choose, city or countryside?
Countryside, I don't know. I've been so fortunate to have traveled so much that I think especially for Outer Cape folks, people really need both. I think ultimately countryside, there's just so much we were evolved to take in nature, and I think it is the most rejuvenating and restful for our creative minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a big city person for a very long time until I moved to Provincetown, and now I've really learned to appreciate smaller spaces, tighter communities, more contacts with your neighbors, and also the nature around us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you, but I love cities too.
Yeah.
In small doses.
For me, city, I'm like, ooh, all the food.
True. Yeah. Oh, yeah. In the winter, whenever I can get to New York, all I do is eat.
Exactly.
Anything but seafood. Next question. Staycation or vacation?
Vacation.
Yeah.
There's just so much to explore out there. And given the opportunities, I always want to go out and find out what I don't know about.
Where's your next trip?
I don't have any trips planned at the moment. I am a new mother, so that itself is a whole trip.
It is. Yeah, I remember last year during the 20 summer season, you were very pregnant. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, if you had to choose, would you have a life with no social media or a life with no television? That links with your Stanley exhibit.
I would be very okay with a life without social media or television, really. Not that there isn't so much amazing art being created for art consumption. Yeah, I'm okay with both. I guess that's me in nature.
Good. Yeah, after the 2016 election,
Mhm.
I turned the TV and I never turned it back on.
Yeah.
And I don't regret it. I mean, we still get shows on demand.
Yeah.
My partner will watch stuff once in a while. I watch very little, but once in a while I'll go watch something. Right now we're watching that series on Apple TV called 1971 about the history of the year 1971. It's amazing. Okay, next question. Pop music or classical music?
I'm just such a yes person.
You have to choose one.
I know. I think pop music, because it just brings you so much joy.
That's true.
And there's always new iterations of it. And there's nothing. It's fun and uplifting. Yes. Give me all the pop music.
Okay, good. And last question. This is the most important as always. Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate cake and vanilla ice cream.
Oh, you're
I know I'm being
compromising.
I am, but like chocolate itself to eat, I am the worst at this section. I want everything.
You want everything.
I want everything.
Yeah, well, I'll take all the chocolate, please.
Okay.
For me, it's very much all about chocolate. Well, good. Now we know everything about you, Alice. But thank you so much for joining us. And just as a reminder, if people want to find out about the programming at 20 Summers, during the months of May and June, and also programming at Stanley, which is year round. They go to 20summers.org, and that's spelled 20summers.org, correct?
Correct.
And what's the social media handle?
We are on Instagram at 20 spelled out underscore summers. But you can find that link on our website as well as sign up for our newsletter. Again, that is the best way to be informed of when tickets are released, when new events are added to our schedule, and soon to be released year round schedule for Stanley.
Wonderful. And if we have listeners in the Provincetown area and the Outer Cape who have never been to 20 Summers activities, I highly recommend it. Every summer, spring, May and June, my partner and I try to buy a few tickets. It's always really wonderful concerts, beautiful exhibits in a really unique space. So I highly recommend it. You should all check it out, right?
Absolutely. Please come see us.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I look forward to seeing you through May and June. And thank you all for joining us. Have a good day.